Well, Travis Campbell, is that you over there in Georgia?
It is.
I'm
Is
still
that
in Montana.
you're in Montana?
I'm in Montana. Going to be leaving in a couple days, and it's been beautiful out here, but the snow is beginning. It will start to fall this week, so I am out of here.
Oh
That is
wow!
not my thing. No, no, no. I've been looking
So
at
it
my
starts
California.
snowing in October in Montana.
What's that?
It starts snowing in October in Montana.
Actually, this is kind of late. Often
Really?
early October. Oh yeah. So I'm teasing everybody. I'm telling them I brought my California weather with me, but I have to take it back when I go.
I've said this before, but it bears repeating. When I first went out to California to do a stint with RTB, it got up to like 85.
Yeah.
And they were apologizing to me. And it gets to 100, 102, 120 even in Albany, Georgia. Full humidity. So I mean, I laughed at them when they gave their apologies. I was like, "Are you kidding me? This is just gorgeous weather."
Yeah, yeah. And then the evenings are perfect. You sit out on your patio and have a beer, and it's 70, 75 degrees, and it's just awesome.
Yeah. So I guess you're going to get back so you can vote. Have you voted yet?
No, I'm going to vote. My wife and I both like to vote in person. Feels a little more real. So we're gonna walk in, and maybe they'll ask us for our ID, and maybe they won't, and we'll vote if no one's voted in our name already.
I just don't believe in voting early.
What's that?
I don't believe in voting early.
Yeah.
So I'm
No.
voting on Tuesday, a week from tomorrow. A week from today, I guess we're airing this today.
Yep.
Which is Tuesday.
Yep. We're gonna do it.
Did you see the Joe Rogan interview?
Yeah, I saw that he interviewed him. I have not yet watched it.
I watched all 3 hours.
What's that?
I watched all 3 hours.
Good. We're having some audio trouble. I'm having trouble hearing you.
How about this? Can you hear me?
It's real choppy. It's an internet problem, not a sound problem. So,
well, I listened to all 3 hours.
Did you?
Yeah. Trump was. Trump is in a different sort of space when he's in an interview like that, because it really was a conversation. It wasn't Joe Rogan has questions and he's going to ask them. They just had a conversation. And so you really got to see a side of him that you had never seen before.
If you look at the liberal headlines, he was ranting and incoherent. Was that your take?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, very lucid. Trump doesn't he doesn't always directly answer a question, but that's not because he's trying to avoid it. He even talked about it. He goes, "I weave," and I think that what he's trying to do is set up context for his answer. And but he's not avoiding your question, because Joe Rogan would steer it back, and he would finally go, "Well, yes," or he would give yes to yes or no questions or no. So he wasn't doing the Kamala word salad thing. Let's be clear, and then nothing is clear by the
right.
I mean, he did not ramble. I saw some of that on like a YouTube headline that he went off cuff and all that. No, he did wander into the weeds some. That's Trump, but he never avoided anything. And Joe, I mean, it was very cordial, and Joe Rogan would kind of nudge him back, and but it was really, I mean, whenever they would bring up a topic, and it was very natural, it wasn't contrived. I would say 95% of the questions were totally non-contrived. Clearly, Joe Rogan had a few things that he just definitely wanted to ask him. So I guess you could say that 5% was contrived, but I just didn't get a sense at all that Trump was trying to. I think I've said this 5 times now, but I don't think he was trying to avoid anything or shirk anything or pass over stuff. It was just a very good conversation.
I think he's going to win. I think he's going to win. I'm going to make a prediction. He
I will
always
not. I will not make a prediction. I'm terrified.
he always polls low, and the polls seem to be in a dead heat. So we'll see. We'll see.
He's doing much better with her than either Hillary or Biden.
Yeah.
So, and he did say that he does not accept the results of that election. He was
Right.
very clear in the interview that no, there was a lot of fraud there. And Joe Rogan wasn't unsympathetic. He didn't sign off on it, but he wasn't unsympathetic with Trump's plight. On your trip home, you and your wife should listen to the interview.
Did
That'll eat up 3 hours of your trip.
did Trump talk about whether he would accept the election results if he does not win? Did he talk about that at all?
It didn't come up.
Okay.
Nothing like that came up. He didn't talk about January 6th, which I thought Joe Rogan would do, but he never. They didn't talk about that.
Okay.
But I mean, again, he talked about whatever Joe Rogan wanted to talk about. Joe Rogan's main goal was for him to get a sense of who he is. That was his goal. And I think Trump hit it out of the park.
Well, good.
I mean, he had an event and he was like 2 hours late for it. But Trump just sat there and his aides were like, you got to go. And Joe Rogan in an interview afterwards with some of his buddies, they're just talking about it. He said the guy didn't pee before the show. He didn't pee after the show. He didn't drink anything during the show. He was the guy's a machine. You know, he just they talked about boxing and MMA fighting. You know, so they literally talked about everything. And Trump, he knows his sports history, at least in that area. He's really into it. He goes to ringside all the time to watch fights.
Wow.
So
Did they talk about any policy?
oh yeah. For example, one of the things that I learned is just how much tariffs are important to Trump. He thinks that tariffs are one of the main things that he can use to bring businesses back here. He talked about it the first time he ran, but he hasn't talked about tariffs all that much. And at least I've not heard him. And I've heard a lot of his speeches. He's not emphasized that. But this time he really he emphasized tariffs. He did talk about lowering taxes. And he also talked about our place in the world and how he just knows that Putin would not have invaded Ukraine had he been in office.
Yeah.
And he goaded Joe Rogan several times. He's like, she doesn't have a high IQ. She's stupid. He said all that. And Joe Rogan wouldn't go there because Joe Rogan wants her to come on his show. It was funny watching Joe Rogan. I don't know if he was holding back words that he wanted to say but didn't, but he was certainly not taking the bait. And that was kind of fun to watch. But Trump predicts that Kamala Harris will not show up and be interviewed by Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I think that her people are playing it pretty safe. She's not doing anything where she has to actually think and talk for herself, it seems like.
Well, I mean, she's stupid not to do that. I mean, she should be doing she should be throwing Hail Marys at this point. So the dumbest thing, because everybody's going to know what that means. And my only criticism of Trump is I kind of think he should have done this next weekend. He should have done the Joe Rogan thing, and he should have done his big to do at Madison Square Garden.
How's he holding? How's he holding in the polls in Georgia?
The word is, the polls seem to keep saying that they're fairly even, but the word is that there are far more Republicans voting early than Democrats. And so everything's trending towards Trump in Georgia.
Good, because that's kind of a swing state.
It is. If he wins 3 states, if he wins all the states that we pretty much think he'll win, and then he wins 3 states, Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, then he wins the election. He has, if things go according to prediction, he has right now something like 238 electoral votes. She has 191. So her path to the 170 is a lot more dicey. And if she loses Georgia, or if she loses one of those states, she can still win, but it's going to be extremely difficult for her to win. And he can get to his 270 without those 3 states. So, and I'm hearing that Arizona is going going for Trump. That's not that many electoral votes, but I'm also hearing something similar about Michigan. So I don't know. I don't know why Pennsylvania would go for Kamala Harris when she's promised that she's going to get rid of fracking.
Right. So what's your personal feelings about whether last election was stolen, cheated on, etc.?
There was a lot of fishy stuff that went on. Hunter Biden's laptop, they suppressed that.
Yeah.
I think that the early voting was mismanaged. I think they used COVID as a cloak to get votes in. I saw Dinesh D'Souza's documentary, and we do have video cameras of people in certain polling stations just shoving envelopes in with votes in there, and it's by the hundreds. How much that tipped the scales in favor, I don't know. One of the things that people don't understand is that the Electoral College is such a great thing. A lot of people think, well, we need to do popular vote. If it weren't for the Electoral College, Trump would have an easier chance of overturning the election. Because let's say you think the election was stolen and you go and you try your case in California. Well, if it's a popular vote, all you got to do is try that one case. And if you win, you've overturned the election. But with the Electoral College, you can't just do that. You have to try 2 or 3 or 4 trials in different states, because 55 votes alone may not make the difference.
Right. So
the Electoral College actually ensured that Joe Biden got to keep his victory. And that's why I think that it's so complicated. So do I think there was cheating going on? Yes. Do I think it was more in Biden's camp than anybody else's? Yes. Do I think it was the factor that overturned the election? I don't know.
Yeah, I tend to not think so. I'm one of the lone conservatives that doesn't put too much stock in that stuff. There's one other thing about the Electoral College, Travis, that if you think about it, if we elected our president simply on popular vote, all they would do is campaign in the largest cities.
Absolutely, yes.
There would be whole swaths of this country that would never see any representation by the candidate. Add up, what is it? Maybe the 15 or 20 largest metro areas in the country,
Mhm.
that's more than half the population. Everyone else would be ignored.
Everybody. I tell my students, this is what I tell them. I tell them what you just told me, and the way I put your point is, Joy Behar on The View says she gets sick and tired of 5 states winning the election every time, and my response to her is, "That's better than 5 cities.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
A lot better
Yes,
than 5 cities." The other thing that we need to remember is that there's a sense in which every winner of every election, including Donald Trump in 2016, every winner of every presidential election wins the popular vote. What a lot of people don't understand, or they fail to fully appreciate, is that the president is not being elected once. There's not one election going on election night. It's 50 elections going on. And so what happens is the person who wins the electoral college in Georgia is the person that won the popular vote in Georgia.
right.
So Trump won more popular votes than Hillary did when he won in 2016. And if you look at it that way, taking the electoral college away destroys states' rights. And as you were alluding to, you have California, you know, um, here, and you have, or actually California here and New York here. And they would just go and campaign there, and all those middle states would be forgotten. There would be no Iowa caucus.
Right.
There would be no, there would be all of the things that go on in our tradition. It would just go away, and we would have, a gazillion people on the East Coast and a gazillion people on the West Coast deciding our fate. And over the years, if you look at every presidency, if it's a liberal, he will move towards the center in the middle of his presidency. So Clinton was very liberal when he got elected. But the midterm elections told him that he had to watch himself. And so in 1992, in 1994, when Newt Gingrich and all those guys came in, he moved centrist, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and Barack Obama, another example, he actually moved far more centrist. But if you make it a popular vote, that guy's going to be as extreme as the people on the most populous areas in the country. So if he's extremely liberal and a bunch of extremely liberal people voted him in, he's going to maintain his extreme liberality. Same thing if it's conservative. If most of the people that vote him in are right-wing Nazis, then he's going to become more of a right-wing Nazi. So the
Yeah.
Electoral College has actually made our presidents more centrist over the years instead of more extreme. So there are multiple reasons to keep the Electoral College, and I don't know why these idiots want to change our Constitution on that score.
It's because they've never heard a rational argument for the Electoral College. They're just not. They're not out there. It really was a stroke of genius by the founders.
Absolutely.
An example, Travis, of what you said a minute ago about it being basically 50 elections, not one large election, and it's the winner of the most of those effectively. It's kind of like, think of a baseball series. The Dodgers are playing the Yankees right now. Well, let's say the Yankees outscore the Dodgers by 10 runs in the first game, but that's the only game they win, and the Dodgers win the next 4 by 1 run scores. Well, if you total up the number of runs in the
Right.
series, the Yankees scored more runs, but they lost the series because that's the rules and that's how you play. And I think that's a good analogy for what
It's
you're
a
talking
very good. I've never thought about that, but I'm going to use that from now on.
about. Okay.
I'm going to steal that. That's a good point. I mean, who are they to say that they lost the World Series or that they won the World Series when they didn't have as many runs as the other team?
Exactly. It's exactly this. It's
How
exactly the
dare
same.
you say that? And it's like, are you crazy? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's when people don't get their way, they throw a hissy fit.
Right.
They want to change the rules.
And then they want to keep the rules when the other side has exactly the same complaint that they have, and they won't give in.
Yeah.
It's politics. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I don't know why people do this.
I
This
have
is the rule. You stick with it. If you want to change them when the season's over, fine.
right, but yeah, not midstream. It's
But
interesting.
you know why people complain about it all the time, but you never see them actually submitting a bill to Congress, for an amendment to the Constitution to get rid
Yeah,
of the electoral college. And the reason is all the Midwestern states, all the states with one or two electoral votes, you're basically saying you don't matter. Your voice doesn't matter.
that's exactly right. Yeah,
And so the representatives of those states are not even going to entertain the idea. And that's why you're not seeing anybody submit that to Congress. Don't
yeah,
you love how liberals are always on, and left-wing people, they're always on and on about everybody has a voice.
yeah. And,
And
and then they
then
want to do away with the electoral college.
the
Right.
one
Good.
thing that really does give all Americans a voice is something they want to get rid of.
Travis, out
Kamala was
there.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So being here in Montana is like the opposite of Los Angeles. I feel like I
Mhm,
have one foot in each place, and I'm really loving this. It's very interesting. Montana is, I think I looked at the demographics. It's like 91% white, and then another 4% that's white and minority. So it's
mhm.
basically like 95% white, and it's entirely conservative. And I told my wife once. I said, I don't ever want to live somewhere where I agree with everybody. I really like the people up here,
Mhm.
um, but there's not a lot of variety of thought in a lot of
Is that
ways.
right? Hmm.
And I'm that's but one thing that's really interesting is there's several people that have told me while we've been up here that they're putting off some financial decisions, buying things and that kind of stuff, and to see what happens until after the election.
That makes sense.
I didn't hear anybody talking like that in California, even my conservative friends. I don't know. That seems odd to me. I just seem to think that, what, business, pretty much everything is going to go on as normal if whoever is elected. Am I blind? What do you think of that?
No, you're not blind. I mean, it's part of the California culture that you guys just expect over-regulation.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, Hugh Ross, I don't know if you were in Sunday school when I think it was the first time I was out there and they were finishing up the building and they were held back by something like 3 months because there was a certain kind of light that didn't fit the regulations.
Yeah,
And it had to do with the wiring and all that. So they had to actually go in and rip out the wiring, and that cost something like $500,000. I mean, it was like a gargantuan amount of money for them to fix that, all because it was, they didn't live up to regulations. And one of the two things that Trump said he wants to do is raise the tariffs and deregulate. He wants to cut taxes, he wants to deregulate, and he
yeah,
wants to raise tariffs. And those three things will do a lot for jobs. And he was talking about this himself. He said there was like a big wall that someone had to they were building some sort of surface and there was a wall and it had to meet a certain standard, and it's this new concrete that's harder than steel, and because it didn't meet the standard they had to tear the wall down, and the construction foreman was like, he's like, this concrete is harder than steel, so I literally can't. So they had to spend a gargantuan amount of money having to meet the regulation. And what that did is that prohibits growth, because if you're a business owner and you want to go build a new building, but it's going to cost you a gazillion dollars to do it, not because of the building, but because of all the regulations,
Yeah.
then you're going to be content with your old building, even though you're being prohibited from making more money and creating more jobs.
Yeah.
Because the current building you have can't hold as many workers and all of that. So I just think that Californians need to really your antennas need to go up and say, look, this is not normal. I mean, we complain about regulations in my hometown and they're bad. I know that they're a gazillion times worse in California.
Yeah, they are. And you're right. It really sucks the life out of you. As a builder, I run into it all the
Oh, I
time.
bet you do. Yeah.
It's another example of California, Montana. California, the building codes are so ridiculous that, a lot of times customers will just say, build it. They don't want to go through the permit process. And so if, the people who put the permit, all the rules and regulations together, if their goal is to overall improve the quality of buildings being built, it's really not happening, because most work gets done without a permit, because it takes 5 months and doubles the price. And at what point does that become inefficient, or it has the opposite effect that it's supposed to have? And then let me finish this. And then in Montana, it's just the opposite. It's so cool, but probably too far the other way. If you don't live in a city in Montana, you can actually buy a piece of property and build anything you want without a permit in most areas. You need a septic tank permit. You need to get a well, and you got to have an electrical permit, but you don't need a building permit for the structure. It's like
Nice.
it's the Wild West out here. It's very cool.
Well, okay, so what is the process? So you go build a shed, and you don't have a permit. How do they regulate that? I mean, is it just, do they don't have enough people to regulate it? In other words, is the organization that does the regulating, do they lack manpower? I mean, what is going on there?
You mean
How do you get away with it, in other words?
here in Montana?
No, in California.
Oh, well, they don't send people around to look at stuff. They don't have, if it doesn't change the legal description of the house, you're doing a kitchen remodel or a bathroom remodel or something
Yeah.
like that, just do it. You just do it, because the permit process is so burdensome and so ridiculous. Most people don't want to deal with it.
That reminds me of what people told me when I was in Russia. Like, if you worked for a can company, let's say you canned soda, Coca-Cola. Southerners call everything Coca-Cola that's a soda.
Yeah.
So you work for a bottling company, and you just bottle soft drinks all the time. And you have a friend that cans tomato soup. And down the road, you have another friend that cans whatever else. Okay, well, what you do, they pay 80% of their income in taxes. 80% of their income in taxes. The average person in Russia, when I was there, if you made $15 a month, you were doing really well.
Wow.
That's the high end. If you're a doctor, you might be making $30 a month. So, yeah. So, what they do is they steal from the companies they work for, and they sell their product on the black market, or they barter so
Yeah.
that they can get the tomato soup, for free. So overregulation creates a sort of dishonesty in the populace, and it's natural
Right.
because it's fundamentally unfair for a person who's not contributing to be able to make millions and millions of dollars off of regulation fees. What are you producing? Who are you helping with this? So And Trump was talking about how California, there used to be a huge lake in the middle of the state, and that was dried up because they redirected the waters to save a fish. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there used to be a lake in California, and I don't know if that's true that it dried up to save a fish, but there was a big lake there.
Well, that's sad.
Yep.
What's really sad is we're done.
We're done, Travis. It's always great to talk to you, even when we just talk. It's a lot of fun.
Love it.
We'll catch you after
Have a
the
safe
election.
trip, and God bless everybody. In 1 week, we'll know who the president is.
That's right.
At least in theory.
All right, brother.
God bless.
See ya.